Okay, hello everybody, and this is the last class in policy evaluations. You have made a great effort to acquire various knowledge about evaluation, and then you successfully evaluated particular policy. You collect the data, you analyze the data, you created the feasible solutions to improve your policy. And then what is the next step? You need to effectively report your evaluation result, right? Also, your evaluation result should be used to improve policy, to help public officials make a decision. Also, your evaluation result can be used to hold public officials accountable for their policy activities. Therefore, this class I will handle how to report and use evaluation result. Okay, and this is the content about how to write the evaluation result, and you need to write the report, and there are some content that you should include in your evaluation report, right? And so before you write the evaluation report, and there are some kind of processes in the middle of your evaluation. So first, before your evaluation, you need to write the evaluation plan, and then in the mini project, you wrote evaluation plan, and then evaluation plan should include the necessity of evaluation, and the possibility of evaluation, right? And then before evaluation, so you need to check that your policy is needed to be evaluated, and also you need to check that there are some kind of data set for effective evaluation. Also, if you start evaluation, and at the beginning of evaluation, so you need to write the initial report. Initial report should include some kind of content confirming target and scope of evaluation, and confirming evaluation schedules. Also, you need to make the agreement with evaluation stakeholders regarding the focus of evaluation. Also, if you report the initial result of your evaluation, and then you need to write the midterm report, and then midterm report should include some kind of content confirming advantages and problems of policy. Also, midterm report should refer to initial result of evaluation analysis, or the way to collect the data. And then at the end of evaluation, you need to write the final report. The final report should include the evaluation result, and evaluators need to provide policy recommendation or suggestions. And then this is the steps to write the evaluation report through the figures, and you can identify the steps that you write the report: design, working draft, formal draft, and final report, right? And finally, you need to write the final evaluation report for your stakeholders. Maybe in the public evaluation process, stakeholders will be public officials who are responsible for policy to help public officials understand evaluation result. The evaluation report should include this kind of content: front page, summary report, introduction, point, conclusion, and appendix. The first front pages. This is the first page of your evaluation result. Front pages need to include the title, year, and date. Then evaluator names, your names, and your institutions. Also, the front pages need to report the table of contents. And then next, summary report. And public officials are very busy. They don't have enough time to carefully review the whole entire pages of evaluation result. Therefore, you need to summarize the result of your evaluations. And then, before the main pages, the evaluators need to summarize the result, describing the core evaluation result, and by providing important policy suggestions and recommendations. And after summary, introduction should be written, and then introductions should include the purpose of policy evaluation, and then the introduction should explain what policy is, what kind of programs are evaluated. And actually, introductions need to describe the policy or programs. And sometimes, evaluators should describe logic model of policy or programs to display the process of policy activities, right? And then, when evaluators provide the logic models, the logic model may include the impact of policy or programs. Impact means, as we learned, impact is the long-term outcomes of policy. And point, after the introduction's point should be written, and then the point is the main area of your evaluation result, and then point need to include the evaluation criteria, evaluation questions, evaluation method or design. Also, in the point, the evaluators need to report to evaluation result, right? And then when we learn evaluation plan, the evaluation plan recommend evaluators to include the criteria, questions, method, and the result, and the points are aligned with evaluation result that we have learned. Lastly, the conclusion should be created and written. In the conclusions, the most important part of the conclusion is to provide the recommendation, policy recommendation. And then also, after evaluators provide the recommendations, the evaluators should summarize the total evaluation content, right? To help public policy officials understand the entire evaluation process. And lastly, finally, appendix should be created. Usually there are references, abbreviations, detailed information, actually the survey questionnaires, and then data sources, right? And data sources should include interviews, list, and survey instrument, right? And this is the additional content of evaluation report. Therefore, in the last pages, the appendix should be added. And in the evaluation report, the most important part of evaluation report, the recommendations, because recommendations play the important role in improving policy, in helping public officials make a decision about policy. Therefore, the feasible, effective, and relevant recommendations will help public officials revise, improve the quality of their policy. Ideally, the effective recommendations can eliminate the cause of the problems described in the findings, right? Also, the ideal recommendation should offer proposals that are feasible, practical, and affordable, right? Also, ideal recommendations should minimize disruptive side effects. Also, if you are effective evaluators, need to discover as many solutions as possible. Therefore, evaluators should pay attention to creating relevant and appropriate policy recommendations. However, it's very difficult to suggest, to make good, appropriate recommendations, and evaluators sometimes may make the mistakes. And I will explain some kind of mistakes made by evaluators. And then the first mistake is that evaluators recommend some kind of solutions outside the authority of evaluated entity. Even though the recommendations are very good, but if the public officials authority do not have any powers, any legal authority to apply recommendation to improve policy, it's useless. Also, some kind of recommendations are very, very expensive, and then increased resources, of course, play important role in improving the quality of policy. But many agencies suffer from the lack of budget, and the budget to improve policy is too much, it's too large or too expensive. It is not feasible. Also, even though there are many recommendations, if evaluator provide just only one recommendation, it's not good. And if you have many ideas and options, try to provide as many options, recommendation as possible. Okay. If you you need to memo, you need to make the memo. Also, your recommendation should be within the law. Your recommendation should not violate the law. It's very important. Even though your recommendation is very effective, but the recommendations violate the legal status, the rules, laws. This is useless and cannot be applied. Okay, so when you write the evaluation report, there are some kind of checklist for good evaluation report. Evaluators need to consider message, audience, and mediums. The first, message. The message means what the writer, evaluators want people to remember after they had read the report. The audience read the paper report, and the message is very important. Effective and constructive messages help audience easily understand what evaluators provide, what evaluators want to say. Therefore, the evaluators need to create the messages which are effectively described, right? And then there are some principles to create the effective messages. Tell stakeholders something they don't already know, right? This is basic. And then the message should be reasonable. Also, message should be concise. Also, when you create the messages, the evaluators need to think about the ideas in the shoes of the audiences and stakeholders, right? And then, therefore, evaluators need to avoid the extreme and unrealistic positions and by using exaggeration and sarcastic languages. And then to create to judge the effective messages, there are some kind of test, MOM test. That means that the MOM test is the tool to identify the effective messages, right? Effective messages should include the concise and specific messages. There are two examples. What is the which example is better? Which example can pass the MOM test? Example 1. Only 80% of children entering school in our towns are fully inoculated against common childhood disease. The average in our state is 90%. Example 2. The reading improvement program studies last years in our schools seem to be working. Reading levels are up significantly in every lesson where it was tried. Which is better? Think about it. Yeah, okay. Definitely examine 1. Why? Examine 1. The first messages include more specific and clear messages by including the figures, numerical values, or by describing specifically the aspect of policy. 80%, 90%, average. This is very specific numerical values. However, in the case of the message 2, it's very abstract and not clear. Seem to be working. Does not provide specific information. Also, reading levels are up. How much levels are improved? It does not provide the specific numerical values about how much reading levels are improved. Therefore, example 2, the message 2 is not good. And then the audience is individuals that are evaluators want to read or hear about the studies, and then evaluators need to consider the audiences about how much audience is satisfied with the evaluation report, how much the audiences understand the evaluation report, right? And then according to the audiences, the evaluation report should be written differently, but in the most cases, the target audiences are the stakeholders, the key stakeholders, decision makers and implementers, because they are highly influenced by evaluation, also because they are very important stakeholders who decide the content of policy. Therefore, in terms of the decision makers and implementers who are responsible for policies, the evaluators need to write the content of evaluation report. And then lastly, the medium. Medium is the type of publication that carry messages for the audiences. There are a variety of the mediums that usually refer to. This is written document. Also, sometimes in a PowerPoint slide should be written. Newsletters, electronic files, and web postings, HTML, should be considered. And then nowadays, in many cases, YouTube is recommended because YouTube is kind of more clear and include more direct message and content. But in most cases, the paper report and the PowerPoint slides are used, and therefore, if it's coming one day, the individual teams should prepare the PowerPoint slide to report your evaluation result. Also, at the end of the semester, maybe by December 19th, you need to, the individual teams should submit the paper report by uploading your paper in the eClass, right? And then this is an example of the PowerPoint slide. And I think most of teams are preparing the PowerPoint slide like this, right? The effective PowerPoint slides need to include what the policy is and evaluation methodologies, findings, or the evaluation result, data analysis and data analysis result, and the finalists provide the recommendations. But this is not a typical PowerPoint slide. According to the content of your evaluations, and try to create the PowerPoint slide, right? And then I hope that most of the teams will create the effective PowerPoint slide and present your evaluation result for students and professors. And then I will give you some feedback, constructive feedback to improve your evaluations based upon your PowerPoint slide, right? Also, other students may give you some kind of constructive feedback. And then Okay, this is the tips on the PowerPoint writings, and I don't know why the other part of is not displayed in the slide, and there are some tips. Usually, the most important sentences should be provided, should be written the first, right? This is the basic principle. If we want to emphasize some things, provide the first, right? Also, if possible, try to avoid the passive sentences. Try to write the active sentence, right? Active sentence emphasize the evaluation result clearly provide your message, right? When you write the evaluation report, try to write the short sentence, right? If you write a long sentence, it is very difficult for audience to understand the long sentence. If possible, separate the sentence and then try to make the short sentence, right? And okay, so like this, you can write your evaluation report, and then effective and then good evaluation report can be used by evaluation stakeholders, usually decision makers, policy decision makers, policy implementers, policy officials who are responsible for the policy actions. And right, there are some theories about the effective evaluation result to use, right? Evaluation results usually formatted by performance information, right? And then just before we learn how to use evaluation result, we need to focus on why we use the evaluation result. In the first class, we learn the purpose of policy evaluation, right? This kind of the purpose of policy evaluation is aligned with why do we use the evaluation result. And then there are 4 purposes of evaluation: decision making, improvement, accountability, and knowledge and learnings. The first purpose of evaluation result, the purpose of evaluation result use is to help public officials make the decision, right? On the basis of evaluation result, the evaluators will make some decisions about policies. The budget of policy should increase or decrease based upon evaluation result. Also, some kind of new agencies may be created on the basis of evaluation result. Also, if evaluation result conclude that the policy is not effective and the public officials make the decision to abolish the policy. Therefore, evaluation result can be used to decide to decide the scope of policy. Also, improvement in the second purposes of the evaluation, public policy evaluation, and then the evaluation result can include so many policy recommendations, options, and suggestions, and then on the basis of these policy suggestions and recommendations, the public officials try to improve the quality performances of policy, right? And then third, accountability. Accountability means that public officials should be responsible for the result of policy, right? And then the reward or punishment can be provided to hold public officials accountable for the result of their policy activities, right? This is the important purposes of policy evaluation, right? And some kind of incentive can be provided, positive and negative incentives, reward and punishment. If our outcomes are produced, budget may increase. Also, the public officials, if the public officials produce positive outcomes, they might be promoted, or their payment, their wages may increase, right? And then this kind of the accountability mechanisms will motivate employees to work hard to improve the quality of policy. Lastly, knowledge and learnings. This is the fundamental purposes of policy evaluation. And then the public officials or experts like me will learn some important messages of policy by conducting policy evaluation, and then accumulate the knowledge about policy. And then there are some kind of theories to categorize the evaluation result use. There are three types of evaluation result use: passive use, active use, and conceptual use. The first, what is the passive use? This means the evaluation result are passively used to just maintain, operate performance evaluation and management systems, right? Regardless of improving the actual policy performances, outcomes. And then in the passive use, on the basis of the evaluation result, performance indicators sometimes measured, and the performance target are adjusted after evaluation. This is very passive and then very small use of evaluation result. Active use is called as instrumental use, and then the evaluation result, evaluation informations can be used very actively in order to create meaningful changes, improvement, right? On the basis of evaluation result, the budget decrease or increase. Also, public officials will be promoted, or their wages, reward increase or decrease. Also, on the basis of evaluation result, organization divisions may be created or abolished, eliminated. And then also, on the basis of the fundamentally the policy goals can be changed or designed new designs in the delivery systems can be provided. Lastly, conceptual use. This means a more abstract, more fundamental, more ideal use of evaluation result. Conceptual use can be interpreted in terms of the organization learnings. Evaluation report includes some kind of the very important and valuable knowledge about a policy. Therefore, this knowledge can be shared among public officials and then just because of knowledge sharing, fundamental change can happen, and then employees, public officials' behaviors or commitment can be changed fundamentally, and it's kind of this in public evaluation results motivate the employees' internal values, and then fundamental behaviors can change, and in the long term, the policy outcomes and performances are improved. This is a fundamental use of evaluation result. Okay, lastly, how to use evaluation result. And evaluation result actively should be actively used, right? How can we motivate public officials to use actively evaluation result? The first, incentives, right? If public officials actively use evaluation result information, budget or their pay increase, budget increase, they are promoted. This kind of incentives will motivate public officials to actively use evaluation result information. Also, in many cases, the public officials are very busy. They don't have enough knowledge and capacity to actively use evaluation result information, because they are not familiar with how to analyze, how to interpret evaluation result. Therefore, public officials need to participate in trainings to build their capacity about how to effectively use evaluation result. Also, if a public agency open evaluation result, the public officials are very pressured by open information, and then try to this kind of open evaluation result can activate public officials to use evaluation result. Also, the voluntarily, if evaluation results are valid and reliable, this means that evaluation is very effective and very conducive to improving public policy, and then automatically public officials rely on this kind of valid and reliable evaluation result information. Then last one, this is mandatory, and then if government create rules about evaluation result use, automatically and mandatorily evaluation result can be used. In the past, the Ministry of Economy and Finance created the rules to activate evaluation result to use. And then the Korean part is the most representative evaluation, the Nok Box, last class, he was expert in designing the Korean K part. The Korean part had very strong rules to make public officials mandatorily use evaluation result. And then in the Korean part, the programs or policies was negative, ineffective. There was automatic budget cut, and the public officials might be very, very pressured because of this kind of mandatory evaluation result use, right? But this is it produces a lot of side effect because of fabrication and manipulation and some kind of biases. And then at this point, this kind of mandatory rules to activate evaluation result use are eliminated at this point. Okay, this is the last content that we have learned. Then, as I said, this class, the most important thing is to build the capacity that you can independently evaluate public policy. I hope that you will kind of apply the knowledge you have learned throughout this course to independently evaluate the policies that you will be responsible for. Okay, thank you very much. And then enjoy the winter vacation. Bye bye.